and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 454, and today's date is August 29th, 2014, and the title of this episode is UK Terror Threat Level Has Been Moved to Severe in Preparation for the False Flag event. Now, we're seeing a lot of warnings in the UK, in the United States. We see another video of the Islamic State beheading someone. Of course, I cannot find the full-length video. If someone would like to send me that link, that'd be great. I'll keep searching for it. But what I'm seeing is the one that they've showed fades out once again. The person's just sitting there waiting to die. So again, it's not really making sense. And if this Islamic State is as terrible as they say and they're scary as they say, they should actually show it so people can get the real effect of it. And it doesn't seem like they're really doing this at this point. They're just letting our minds fill in the gaps and let us believe that something is actually happening. Now, what we're seeing is that the central bankers, the U.S. government, are pushing this terror all over the place, and they're provoking all the countries around the globe, especially Russia, and they're bringing in China, they're bringing in North Korea, and we understand that the Middle East is completely falling apart. And what else is going on is they're really pushing the hype about this economic recovery that we're having right now. Now, we're seeing a lot of data being manipulated, and we're seeing very strange anomalies in this data where all of a sudden all these numbers are way down, and we have this incredible shoot to the stars increase, and we're seeing this in the Chicago PMI. It exploded to the biggest beat in 10 months, having collapsed to a 13-month low in July. All of a sudden, we saw it go from 62.6 in June to 52.6 in July, and now the August print is back up to 64.3, beating all of those, and we can see that they're just pushing this as hard as they can. But when we look at the real economic indicators like retail, the amount of people that are being laid off, the amount of people that are unemployed, and I'm not talking about the government number of 6.2% because next week I think the unemployment numbers are going to come out, and I wouldn't be surprised if they bring it down to 5.9% to try to convince everyone that this recovery is full steam ahead. And what we're seeing is that the spending is starting to drop now. Incomes and outlays expected to rise by 0.3% and 0.2% respectively. The July data was a big dud, missing on both expectations. And while income rose by a modest 0.2%, far below the 0.5% in June, it was personal spending, which in fact declined by 0.1%, a major drop from the 0.4% increase in the prior month, and the first outright decline in spending since January. And this is not due to the weather. There's no snow. It's not because it's hot. It's because people are getting laid off, people are unemployed, people are nervous, and they're not spending it. And we see this in housing and retail. It's very evident right now. But of course, the corporate media, they're out there trying to convince everyone that we're in this complete, unbelievable, unreal recovery, but those people who are not paying attention really do think we're in this recovery. This is out of the Financial Times. U.S. rebounds stronger than first thought. I mean, this is the headline, so people are reading this going, oh my God, everything looks great. Now, of course, those people who are laid off, looking for work, getting their severance payment, and it's running out, and they're sending out their resume, and they're scratching their heads going, I don't know, they keep telling us that unemployment keeps coming down. We're in this fantastic recovery. GDP's up to 4.2%. Why can't I find a job? And we're finding that this is happening to many, many people who are getting laid off, who don't have jobs. It's getting more and more difficult for everyone to find this work. Now, what's very interesting, J.P. Morgan is out there, and they are warning everyone, which I think is very strange since we're in this incredible recovery, which we know is an illusion. They're out there, and this J.P. Morgan's Alex Kantarovich warns that the markets are now bracing for the U.S.-EU responses. In the worst-case scenario, now appearing more likely, severe pressure on stocks may extend, and he concludes, we believe that with the significant deterioration in the Ukraine situation, markets may treat this as a Lehman-style shock. So right now what they're doing is they're prepping everyone, and they're trying to convince you, because what's happening in Ukraine or whatever else is going on, this is going to cause everything to collapse, just like during that period of Lehman Brothers. And we can see they are really pushing this. So one hand, that we have this fantastic recovery, everything is going perfectly. The other hand, they're letting out tidbits of warning, letting us know that because of these situations around the world, we might have a collapse type of situation like 2008 or so. Okay, now we all know about the no-fly list, and we understand that there was a judge that ruled that said it's completely unconstitutional, and they ordered Obama to do a couple of things. And we have to understand that this no-fly list is, you don't know how you get on it, you don't know how you get off of it, you really don't know why people are being put on there. And last time I broke it down of who's really on there, and it seems like there's a lot more Americans who are considered domestic terrorists than people that are from Al-Qaeda or the Islamic State. So we really understand what the no-fly list is. It's people that they're tracking that they believe might pose a threat to their authority when everything starts collapsing. But the Obama administration is fighting a federal judge's order requiring it to explain why the government places U.S. citizens who haven't been convicted of any violent crimes on the no-fly database. The administration right now is challenging the demand from the U.S. District Judge Anthony Trenga, who is presiding over the Virginia federal court case. In asking Trenga to reconsider his August 6th order, the government responded last week. Defendants request clarification of the purpose of the requested submission so that defendants may respond appropriately. Now, the question we all have to ask is, why is the president trying to pretty much challenge the ruling of the no-fly list? It makes no sense, because if you follow the Constitution, this is completely against your rights, and this no-fly list really shouldn't exist at this point, and there should be a way for people to understand why they're even on it, and there should be a way of getting off of it. Plus, by using this list, they are indicating that you are guilty and you have to prove your innocence, where in fact you're innocent and they have to prove you're guilty. So they kind of switch this around at this point. Now, the FBI National Domestic Threat Assessment, their database, their system that they use, for some reason omits the Islamist terrorists. Because they keep telling us the Islamic State, the Al-Qaeda, all these groups, they are the threat in the United States. But what we're seeing right now is that the most recent National Threat Assessment for domestic terrorists makes no reference to Islamist terror threats, despite last year's Boston bombing marathon and the 2009 Fort Hood shooting, both carried out by radical Muslim Americans. Now, instead, the internal FBI intelligence report concluded in its 2013 assessment published this month that the threat to U.S. internal security from extremists is limited to attacks and activities by 8 types of domestic extremist movements, none motivated by radical Islam. They include anti-government militia groups, white supremacy extremists, along with sovereign citizens, nationalists, anarchists. Other domestic threat groups outlined by the FBI assessment include violent animal rights and environmentalist extremists, black separatists, anti- and pro-abortion activists, and Puerto Rican nationalists. Domestic extreme violence continues to be unpredictable and at times severe, the report states. So what they're saying is they're more worried about the domestic terrorism, those people who are anti-government and all the other groups, because when this collapse comes, those are the people they'll be following. Those are the people that they'll be looking at. Those are the people they'll be picking up. These are the people that they are nervous about. And we can see this is why all of these groups are on this list. And of course, as you know, they've been creating lists through the NSA, through the fusion centers, creating social profiles, correlating all the data, and making sure they understand who actually really poses this threat. And from all the police activity and the militarization of the police and the drills they're having with black helicopters, you can tell they are definitely getting prepared for something very, very big coming very, very soon. And we see across the globe things are starting to really ramp up. Now, in Japan, We know they're right in the center of the Pacific there with China, and we know the United States is pivoting and encircling China, but Japan is looking to boost its defense budget to the biggest it's ever been. Now you have to remember, they're also changing their Constitution, Article 9. They don't want to be a pacifist nation anymore. They want to defend, they want to fight, and they've created their first warship since World War II. They've also created other military assets, and it looks like they want to start purchasing drones, stealth fighters, new high-tech submarine, and intensifying military rivalry to protect themselves from China, basically. The Japanese Defense Ministry has asked for a 3.5% spending increase to 5.05 trillion yen from 48.7 billion for the fiscal year. Japanese Defense Ministry wants to buy 6 F-35 stealth fighter planes, which I don't think they really should because they don't work. Lots and lots of problems with that fighter, but hey, whatever they want to spend their money on. Japan also wants to buy surveillance drones and tilt-rotor aircraft that can take off and land like a chopper but fly like a plane. The Japanese Navy wants to buy 7 destroyers equipped with the Aegis ballistic missile system to bolster its defenses against any attacks from North Korea. We will fortify our system of defending the whole country continuously and in a multi-layered fashion against missile attacks. And this is coming from the Defense Ministry of Japan. So we can see right now they are definitely prepping. Many of the countries, including NATO and all the European nations, are beefing up their military spending, beefing up their military assets, hiding military assets in caves, getting prepared for the war that is coming. And we can see right now that the United States central bankers have been pushing, provoking Russia, China, North Korea. They're using their agenda in the Middle East to get into Syria, and they're doing everything they possibly can to push war instead of peace. Now, right now, the Dutch Prime Minister is out there, and he is saying that sanctions against Russia really don't work at all. And like I said yesterday, really the United States, Europe, and Russia, China are all in an economic war at this point. And you know what happens. You're in an economic war, it's ramping up, it's accelerating, and that leads to a world war. Now, Kiev is out there saying that we have never received any notification that Moscow wants to bring a second humanitarian convoy into Ukraine. So Russia is out there, and they're saying we're going to send a second note to the Ukrainian foreign minister, and hopefully they'll take into account the proposals of what we'd like to do to bring in the humanitarian aid. And of course, before we have to remember, Ukraine was out there spewing propaganda that there were missiles and military men inside these white trucks that were spray painted for military vehicles. And what we found out was, no, there was humanitarian aid, there were blankets, there was food, and that's pretty much. And the Red Cross assisted with this. They drove in the trucks with the OSCE, and they brought the humanitarian aid to that area. They dropped it off, and the trucks left, and that was it. So, of course, again, Ukraine use a lot of propaganda to convince people that Russia is invading. Now we see Russia is out there, and they are out with the UN Security Council. They wanted a ceasefire between Ukrainian government, their anti-terrorism forces, and the southeastern people of Ukraine, but for some reason that was blocked, and I'm trying to figure out who actually did the blocking of this, and I haven't found it just yet, but it was blocked, and there is no ceasefire. Now, if you really look at the situation here, we see that Ukraine continually pushes their agenda. They have their orders from the bankers. They are pushing into the southeastern region, but they are losing ground because the southeastern forces are continually pushing them back. They are losing the battle. The people don't want to fight in this war. They're protesting, they're rioting. The economy is collapsing. They have no gas. People are stocking up on wood and coal because they know it's going to be a very cold winter. And you have to understand, the propaganda is coming out there, and they're using it for a specific reason. Now, I am not for Russia. I am for the people of the United States here. I am not really for any type of government whatsoever. I'm just reporting what I'm seeing. I'm looking at both sides here, and I hate to say it, the more lies that the United States government comes out with, it doesn't convince me that they can tell the truth. And every time I look into it, I see more and more lies. And again, I only like governments that are for the people and who want peace. And when you know they want peace, they look at both sides and say, listen, we don't want war. Let's sit down. Let's discuss this. If a leader, a government can do this, they're looking out and saying, you know what, we don't want to put our people in harm's way. And what we're seeing here in the United States is I don't see this happening. And we see a lot of lies coming out of the Obama administration and out of these spokespeople. And they're using the propaganda that Russia is invading with the T-72 tanks, and of course we have information that Hungary sold the T-72 tanks to Ukraine through Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic, I mean, and brought it into Ukraine. And there's about 58 of them. And we can see right now they're also saying that Russia is bringing in about 1,000 troops. Well, listen, if Russia's really going to invade, are they really going to use 1,000 troops and bring in 58 tanks? I mean, let's just think about that for a second. But if we really look at this, Putin has invested heavily in diplomacy. He's always called for a ceasefire. He's always said, let's get both sides together and let's sit down. He would not come in with 1,000-man troop. He wouldn't come in with 58 tanks if he was going to invade. And he wouldn't risk all of this after he's been talking about peace all this time. It makes no sense. His actions don't push this type of agenda at all. And if he decides that he's going to send in Russian military to protect the Russian residents in the eastern and southern Ukraine, he will send in enough troops to do the job quickly, as he did in Georgia when the American and Israeli-trained Georgian army invaded, which was destroyed in a few hours by the Russian response. If you hear Russia is invading and they have video and pictures of 100,000 Russian troops with air cover, they will take out all the Ukrainian missile sites and all that stuff. They will bombard the troops there with air power. They will bring in not 58 tanks. They'll bring in many more than that, and they will ransack Ukraine in a matter of minutes. Look what is happening with the southeastern people. They have been pushing the Ukrainian anti-terrorist forces back just with what they have. If Putin was going to come in, believe me, he'll make it well known that he is going in full force just to end this whole entire thing. But what we're seeing is that the U.S. is really not calling for any type of peace whatsoever. All you hear from the U.S. is Russia needs to stop their aggression. Stop it. Now, if Obama really wanted peace and the government officials really wanted peace, you would hear speak like this. Putin and Obama, we need to meet. Obama would be saying this, we need to meet, we need to sit down and talk about some type of ceasefire. At this time, maybe both sides should stop fighting so we can have a dialogue about talking about what is going on. Remember when Poroshenko wanted the ceasefire? What did he want? He wanted the southeastern people to lay down their weapons, come out with their hands up, and he would go in and arrest those leaders. That was his ceasefire deal. It's an ultimatum. That's not talking peace. That's not having a dialogue. So right now, Obama continually says, like a bully, stop your aggressions in Ukraine. That's all he says. He doesn't talk about peace. He doesn't talk about anything. He doesn't say, listen, we will hold Ukraine, they will cease fire, Please have your side cease fire and let's have a dialogue. That's real peace. When you give someone an ultimatum, it is not real peace. And when you see these satellite photos coming out and they're saying that they see the convoy of tanks, look at these satellite images. First of all, they're blurry. They're taking from very far above. The close-up version of it does not show tanks anywhere. They've also removed the imprinted date and stamp of Digital Globe. They put on their own Photoshop labels onto the pictures. And I took a satellite photo from Digital Globe because I'm going to tell you right now, the technology today allows the satellites to take an HD high-res color version of everything, and they can go all the way down and read writing on buildings. I've seen one when I was looking, and I posted it on the X22 Report site. Look on Sentinel Alerts. You will see it is a picture of Florida, Merritt Island, where the space shuttle is, and you can see, this is from Digital Globe, how close they can get. They can get even closer, actually. But you can see how clear it is. And then look at the pictures that they're showing us. These satellite images are from, what, the 70s? If this is the technology they are using to convince us to go to war, they better think twice about this, because it makes no sense that these are the type of pictures they're trying to produce with the technology we have today. Now, it looks like when Putin was down talking to Poroshenko in Minsk, it seems like Putin said to Poroshenko, listen, can you release those soldiers that are being held in Ukraine? And Putin is saying that Poroshenko gave his word that he will release the Russian troops that got lost. And he says, you have my word. I don't know if I really believe him, but we will see what happens if they actually release those kids that got lost on the path in Ukraine, on the Russian-Ukraine border there. Now, the UN is out in Ukraine and Russia, and they're looking at everything, and the United Nations says it's unable to confirm whether the Russian forces are inside Ukraine's troubled southeastern region. A spokesperson for UN Security General Ban Ki-moon said on Thursday that the world body was unable to verify reports that hundreds of Russian troops had crossed into Ukraine to shore up pro-Moscow militias in the region. Ban is alarmed by reports that fighting in eastern Ukraine has spread southward near the border of the Sea of Azov and the Russian Federation. Ban's spokesman noted, adding, if confirmed, this will mark a dangerous escalation in the Ukrainian crisis. And of course, the United States is out there. They're pushing their agenda. They are just trying to push as hard as they possibly can and demonize Russia. Now, this whole entire invasion scheme that they've came up with about these tanks being there, using these ridiculous satellite images, it's always for a specific reason. And this reason is starting to really come out right now. It seems like Ukraine's cabinet has asked the country's parliament to consider dropping the country's non-aligned status and seek membership now in NATO because of the situation that's going on right now. Yatsenyuk's government submitted to the parliament that a draft bill that would cancel Ukraine's non-aligned status and revive the country's quest to join NATO. NATO is establishing 4 trust funds to finance the modernization of the Ukrainian armed forces. NATO Secretary General Rasmussen said on Friday, we are establishing 4 trust funds to finance concrete initiatives within 4 areas: logistics, command and control, cyber defense, and help to the military personnel, including wounded personnel. Now, the State Duma Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Alexei Pushkov says NATO rules forbid to admit a country that has territorial disputes with other states. State Duma Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Alexei Pushkov said on Friday the United States might give Ukraine the status of special ally outside NATO. Ukraine does not meet NATO criteria for several reasons. Now, we can see right now they're pushing the agenda to join NATO, to bring in NATO forces into Ukraine, but because the civil war is going on, it doesn't meet the qualifications, but it seems like the United States might get what they want, where they can consider Ukraine an ally. Now, we understand out in Lebanon, Libya, Yemen, things are really falling apart. Tribes are rising up. Libya pretty much is overrun right now. Yemen is on its way, and Lebanon is next. So the United States has begun delivering nearly about 20 million of arms, including assault rifles, anti-tank missiles, and mortars to bolster Lebanon's army. U.S. Embassy said that the arms shipment started on Thursday and so far had included about 400 anti-tank guided missiles, more than 1,500 M16A4 rifles, and many mortars. And we can see they're trying to keep this back and push and push and push the tribes back. And again, the tribes are gaining ground. They have a lot of people who are saying this is absolutely ridiculous. We are done with this puppet government. We want our country back. Now, Russia is very concerned about the U.S. decision to make a reconnaissance flights over Syria. And the United States central bankers are doing this right now. They're using drones and other surveillance equipment to fly over Syria. And Russia says they are concerned about the U.S. decision to authorize this. The ministry urged Washington to act in accordance with international law. It clearly says that in the absence of states' consent to forcible operation on its territory, it can be authorized only by the UN Security Council. And they're saying that the United States does not have authorization right now, and of course they're doing it without the permission of Syria, and they're just doing pretty much whatever they want. Now, in Iran, it seems like the P5+1 talks are still going on. It seems like they're actually really going nowhere because this is exactly what the United States wants. They keep changing the requirements. They keep putting it off. And it's a little game that they usually play to make the other country think that, oh, okay, if we do this, you'll be satisfied. But the United States will never be satisfied because they don't want a peace deal. And this is quite evident because the United States has imposed new sanctions on more than 25 Iranian individuals and companies. The Treasury Department said on Friday that these sanctions targets include shipping firms, oil companies, airlines, and 6 Iranian banks. The question is, why would you impose more sanctions if you're working out a peace deal? It makes no sense. The other side will say then, well, wait a minute, you're placing sanctions on us while we're in the middle of a peace negotiation? It makes no sense to do this, and we see that there is no peace deal. What they're doing is they're prepping for the invasion of Iran. They're going to say the peace deal is completely fallen apart as they keep pushing the Islamic State further and further closer to Damascus, gaining ground, allowing the U.S. inside Syria. They're going to eventually take out Syria. I mean, this is their plan. I don't know if it's going to really actually work because Russia has an agreement, China has an agreement, and they will come to their aid. But this is their plan, to keep pushing the Islamic State and have them do the work on the ground to reach Damascus. So you can see what they're trying to do at this point. Now, of course, Obama was out there, and everyone is making fun of him that he has no strategy yet because he mentioned it in a briefing. And don't be misled by what he is saying or his inaction. This is actually his strategy. The strategy is we are not going to do anything. We don't want to invade. We don't want to go into any certain area like Ukraine. And he's going to continually play the bumbling idiot because what he really wants, and his strategy is to have other things push Congress and people to tell him to go into these areas. So it looks like he's saying, oh, you know what? We're coming up with a strategy, but we don't know what we're going to use yet. Translation, he's waiting for a special event to occur, so that would be the strategy. He's saying in Ukraine, the United States has no intentions of going into Ukraine right now because he really can't. Because under the War Powers Act, the only way he can get troops in there is if the southeastern people of Ukraine attack the United States. Well, we know, I mean, they could stage it, but we know that's not going to happen at this point. The UN has to vote saying, yes, you can bring troops in there, or Congress has to vote on it and say, yes, we're going to bring troops into there. So right now, what he's talking about is absolutely meaningless, and it's lip service, but he's playing on the people to show them that, listen, I am not going to bring troops in there, so you can see that I want peace. No, that's not what he's saying. what he's really saying is, I'm waiting for a special event where we can get troops into all these different areas, because I really don't have the authorization, and I'm not looking to have peace at this time, as you can tell. Now, as we see all across of what's been happening in the Middle East, in Ukraine, out in the Pacific, out in Africa, we see that they're really pushing terror, 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 and they're not stopping. And right now, it looks like Wall Street is saying that if a cyber attack hit the banking system at any time, it would completely crash it. Well, we knew this from the beginning. We knew there was going to be a cyber attack on the financial institutions. I've been saying this for a very long time, and it seems like we're heading right down that path. Bank of America said there can be no assurance that we'll not suffer such losses in the future. Citigroup says Citi has been subject to intentional cyber incidents from external sources. Citi may be unable to implement effective preventative measures or proactively address these methods. Every time of every hour of every day, a major financial institution is under attack. Now, they're building this up and letting us know. Now, what's very interesting is that a report came out today saying that bakers and U.S. officials have warned that a cyber terrorist will try to wreck the financial system's computer networks. Now, of course, they are putting this out there because they want everyone to understand, when they blame this on Russia, they want to make sure you understand it is them, that they're the ones who brought down the economics system and collapsed the United States. And what this goes on to say is that I can't foresee a situation where the president wouldn't do something via executive order if the banks are hit. This is coming from Edward DeMarco, General Counsel of the Risk Management Association, a professional group of the banking industry. All we're talking about is the difference between the destructive of tangible property and intangible property. Bank security officials believe that hackers may have been aided by the Russian government, possibly as retribution for U.S. sanctions over the Ukraine war. Now, they're saying right now, of course, as we know, that J.P. Morgan and other banks have been hit, and they're blaming this on Russia, and they're trying to pin this on Russia. And what they're saying is the worst case event, that they'll destroy records, drain accounts, and the network would be frozen, which would hurt the economy on a scale of the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attack. The government response, though, might be more akin to the 2008 credit meltdown, when the Federal Reserve invoked unusual and exigent circumstances to lend billions of dollars. The government might have little choice but to step in after an attack large enough to threaten the financial system. Federal deposit insurance would apply only if a bank failed, not if hacked and the accounts are drained. Like I said, read your terms of service from the banks. It says they are not responsible for your money if there is a cyber attack. I looked at many different banks. Go to the terms of service, look, just type in search, go to cyber attack, and see if your bank has it. Most, I would say almost all of the banks have it at this point. They just, it's right in there. You cannot miss it. The banks would have to tap their reserves, bail-ins, and then their private insurance, which wouldn't be enough to cover all claims from a catastrophic event. So basically they're saying they're going to go and do bail-ins on all the banks. And of course they're hoping that the government will step in at the same time and bail them out. Now, if you remember back, and those people who have been listening to me, I said the collapse is not going to come in one stage. It's going to come in many different stages. The first stage is going to be the events that will occur that will bring the financial institutions to their knees. The second thing that's going to happen is the Federal Reserve, the U.S. government, is going to pump in stimulus again to pump everything back up. Now, of course, they're going to make it seem like the government is, the Fed is coming to the rescue because Russia brought down the economy, or whatever group they're going to blame it on. But right now it looks like Russia brought down the economy, and the Fed is graciously helping us by stimulating the economy again. They didn't want to do it, but they're going to do it. And we can see right now that they're going to make the case why they have to do the bail-ins, because they drain the accounts. Most of the accounts say zero right now, and they will pump the economy once up once again. Not as high as it is now, but up to a level where they can say they can sustain it, and this will bring us to the spring of 2015. If this does happen in the fall of 2014, as we approach October, then they will say, okay, another hit, and it brought our economy completely down, and we will be going to war. So they're going to play this whole thing out. They're going to try to continually stimulate the economy. They're going to go with the bail-ins, and we can see how this is all playing out. And this continues on saying that Janet Napolitano, and as we know, she made that statement as she was leaving DHS, warned in her speech that the country will someday suffer a cyber September 11th that will have a serious effect on our lives, our economy, the power infrastructure, and we can see right now that this is all starting to pretty much come about. The next wave of attacks probably will be more destructive and could result in account balances and books and records being converted to zeros, according to the June document from SIFMA. Lawrence Morrell, a former insurance commissioner for the District of Columbia, said that without precedent, it's difficult for insurers to estimate the possible collapse type of situation. So we can see they are totally getting prepared for this, and right now we're seeing so many warnings out there. Remember the power station that got hit? They were special unit that broke in, used special tools and weapons to bring down the power grid in California. Well, it seems like that California power station was attacked again, and this time they stole certain things like pipe benders, ground compactors, and power tools and other equipment from this area, which is very strange that this so happened to occur at this time. And as we know, the Islamic State has done a second beheading, giving the message to President Obama: do not attack us, stop your attacks inside Iraq, or we'll continually behead more and more people. Of course, this is playing into the whole scenario of the United States continually bombing this area, which they will not stop. Now, the UK has raised their terror threat level to severe, and I said this a couple days ago when I reported on the FBI being pushed into UK to help out with this terrorist situation. And as I said back then, anytime the FBI is there, it seems like we have some type of false flag event. And it's very interesting that the UK has just increased their warning level, their threat level, to severe. UK Secretary Theresa May has announced that a terrorist attack on the UK is highly likely, although stressed that there is no information to suggest an attack is imminent. UK terror threat level raised to severe. Real and serious threat in the UK from terrorism, May says. Her decision is based on the latest intelligence from Syria and Iraq. And of course, as we know, this will most likely be an inside job. The FBI is on the scene, and this might be the first stage of the false flag events, and then have it ripple through some other countries, then to finally hit the United States. Now, there are more alarms sounding right now. Reports are coming out from the feds, law enforcement scrambling to stop ISIS carnage on the border. The U.S. government is warning that a terrorist attack is imminent on the border between Texas and Mexico, according to the government watchdog group Judicial Watch. The group said sources have told that the Mideast terrorist army ISIS is now operating in the Mexican city of Juarez, the narcotics trafficking center located just across the border from El Paso, Texas, and is planning to attack the U.S. with car bombs or improvised explosive devices carried by vehicles. Another source told the group that the attack is so imminent, the commanding general at the U.S. Army's Fort Bliss in El Paso is being briefed. So we can see right now that from all of this, it seems like the green light is on. It seems like all the agents around the country are on standby, ready to go. They have the green light. The event is going forward. And this right here tells you that something huge is coming, and this is coming out of DHS. The Department of Homeland Security reacted to the news that the United Kingdom had raised their terrorism threat level and downplayed any additional threat to the United States. At present, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the FBI are unaware of any specific credible threat to the U.S. homeland from the Islamic State right now. Johnson warned, though, and he warned Americans about the continued threat of homegrown violent extremism inspired by radical ideology overseas. We will continue to evaluate and adopt serious and prudent homeland security measures as the situation warrants, but we're keeping an eye on those domestic terrorists. So, what is he really saying here? Well, right now, as DHS always says, we are not looking for terrorists. We're looking at the people of the United States, and we're very worried about them rising up because the collapse is coming. And when this collapse occurs, even though it's going to be covered up by blaming it on Russia and the Islamic State, the collapse is still going to occur, and we still have to watch the people of the United States. And any time the Department of Homeland Security says we have no threat, we don't have any information, and the FBI has no information, you know something's going to happen. They had no information on the Boston bombing. Look what happened. They never have any type of information, and this is when something happens. Listen, everyone, this is the time to get ready. They are warning you right now. We've been talking about this for a very long time. This will be a multi-pronged event. You need to make sure that you are prepared, that we are all prepared, that we stay in constant contact, that we try to tell as many people as we possibly can that this whole thing is completely fake and it's false. We are not going to go to war for the bankers. And I just want to say that anyone that wants to reproduce my videos that I do, my MP3, into a different language, into any one of your countries, in France, if you speak French and English and you want to put it up and translate what I'm saying, be my guest. You can do that. I rather have this go across the world and bring everyone together to understand what is going on so we can all stand up at once and say, you know what? No, we are not doing this. So you do have my permission to translate this into another language, and you can go ahead and put this out in your country. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.